we got the infamous non-qualifying in the quarterfinal of golf tournaments, Dr. Mark Murphy with us.
Correct. That's correct.
There's a story for that. I'm sure
Thanks,
he'll have
thanks
to
for
tell you
spanking that.
No, you guys, sure you know Dr. Murphy. If you don't, you should. He's one of the, what do we call you? You're a youngster, so you're not a grandfather of DSM.
No, I made awesome. So it's funny. I made my first device like 35 years ago, teaching with Keith Thornton, but I was not like into it, or I was not a pioneer. I was not at the forefront. I was like learning at his feet, you know. And he and I were teaching a TMD course, so it was fun to learn more about sleep. And he was just telling me that, hey, if you're treating TMD, you got to know something about sleep. Just like my friend Jameson Spencer would say, if you're treating sleep, you got to know something about TMD. And yeah, you kind of do. You got to go both ways on that, for sure.
Yeah. So you've been treating sleep for a minute.
Yep.
You only sleep now in your practice, and
correct.
You're kind of on the forefront.
Kind of limited.
You're kind of on the forefront of a lot of research, which is some of what we're talking about tonight.
It is. I'm really fortunate to, work with John Rimmers, Aaron Mosca. We've done, Prasannas is probably, I would argue we've probably done more research than all the other research combined in dental sleep medicine in the last, 10 years, 15 years. And so we'll talk a little bit about that tonight. Tonight's really not just about Prasannas. It's just about precision. It's about some new things that are coming in dental sleep. So anything I do say nice, if I do accidentally or purposely say something nice about Prasannas, take it with a big grain of salt because I work for them. So a disclaimer, notice, warning, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, hey, let me give the quick CE stuff. You guys,
okay.
It's a CE event tonight. So hang out, you'll get a link. It'll take you, I don't know. We make up a number every time, 17 and a half seconds to click 4 buttons and tell us who you are and that you deserve a CE. You'll get it in your email by 7 p.m. Pacific time tonight. So multiply that out. What is that? 10 o'clock Eastern. If you don't have it, it's in your spam. But we'll get you a link for that. There is a recording available in case you do miss some of this tonight, but I wouldn't recommend it. Dr. Mark's going to be on fire, and we're going to have some fun. So I'll get out of the way, man, until I interrupt you.
No problem. No, anytime. You are welcome to interrupt me. My sentences are your sentences. That's how it works. So tonight we're talking about Back to the Future, Dental Sleep Medicine Edition. And I want to start off by kind of reminding us how lucky we are, because I think we would all agree that we get to do something that's really fun to do and really rewarding for me in so many ways and for my team in so many ways. And that's really good because from a self-interest standpoint, when I get to do something that is fun, doesn't feel like work, it's fulfilling, it feels rewarding, and we get paid well for it, that's all good. But at the same time, those same things that we're doing helps make the world a better place. And not discounting what I did as a dentist, not discounting what you did as a dentist. But I was talking to an office manager, friend of mine, and I said, and they had just come from the franchise world, the franchise industry, working for Popeye's Chicken and a couple of the Dunkin' Donuts, a couple of the franchises that are related. And I said, with no disrespect to what you were doing, but I mean, I'm just thinking that when you got up in the morning and you went to your franchise company job, it might not have been as better for the world. You employed a lot of people, you gave people jobs and work, you helped feed people, absolutely. But, it's not like they were the healthiest foods. It's, maybe sometimes serving some of the population that really can't afford that kind of food. So it's nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying that, but when you're helping people breathe better at night and reducing these comorbidities and stuff like that, it is something that not only can I be proud of, but if my parents were alive today, they'd think it was really cool what I was doing. They thought it was cool that I was a dentist. They think this is cooler. My kids, my grandchildren will think what I'm doing is cool. I mean, they'll be proud of me. And that's kind of a good feeling. So I wanted to start off with that thought. And the reason I want to start off with that thought is to frame, we get a choice every day to make decisions in those circles that help us do our best stuff with and for people that we like. And so by staying up to date on what's here right now today in dental sleep medicine, what's coming soon for us in the future, maybe we'll talk about a couple of things that are a little bit more distant down the road in the future, but not too far distant that I won't be around to enjoy them. It'll keep us framed on doing more of this kind of thing that helps us, be proud of what we're doing. Seeing as the Back to the Future was the theme, I tried to get humorous here. If my calculations are correct, when this baby hits 88 miles per hour, we'll go back to the future. So we're going to talk about really 6 things tonight. We're going to talk about K1027, a new code that the CMS has approved. There are 3 devices that are currently approved, including our PreSonus Evo, that are acceptable for the K1027 code. It's a new Medicare code. Does not require a mechanical hinge. Don't get excited. You can't get paid for it yet. We'll talk about what gets paid and how it gets paid. We're going to talk about new materials and how important that is. We've got some new materials and they're great, but we need greater. We need better materials. We're not done improving materials and the technology that we use. Third thing we're going to talk a little about tonight is precision, because we have made devices by hand in laboratories using parts and pieces cobbled together from orthodontics and using cold cure, bench cured acrylics and hot pots. And they're not always as precise as we want them to be for a lot of reasons. And I think medicine is going to expect that from us. Speaking of medicine, they expect an evidence-based dental sleep medicine approach. They expect research, peer-reviewed, independent studies, prospective controlled clinical trials, randomized trials. That's how we're going to win their hearts, their minds, and more importantly, the prescription pads that they write out or send digitally that say, make this patient an oral appliance. Today, about 5% of all sleep apnea patients who are treated, which is maybe 15% of the total, get an option of an oral appliance. And with some of the recent research with evidence-based improvements in devices, technology, we should see more and more of that. We'll talk briefly about sensor technology and how that's going to become a standard operating procedure and an expectation in dental sleep medicine. No longer will we be able to say, how often did you wear it? How was your oxygen? What was your heart rate? That should all be embedded in the sensor technology. And then finally, a thing to sort of shake our tree just a little bit. I wouldn't say, put the fear of God in you, but some worry. But if we don't step up to material challenges, precision challenges, good research and evidence, improving the sensor technology, if we don't do that kind of stuff, someone else will. And there already are threats on the horizon. And so I'll show you some data and some information from the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, our brothers and sisters in medicine, and some of the concerns that they have of what's maybe forthcoming and concerning to them. K1027 is a code that you can look up in the DME coding session. And it says that it's a device meant to do all the things that we would expect the device to do. But the language that's missing from K1027 that's in the coding from the Medicare department and PDAC guidelines for EO486 is it does not have to have a mechanical fixed hinge. No longer will we need a metal Herbst rod on the side or a tap attachment in the front. And so we have this very unusual new code, which was written and approved really quite a few months ago. And when it was approved, a couple of different devices, including Slow Wave and PreSonus, saw this. And so we've written for and requested and received approval for our Evo is an acceptable K1027. So that means technically today, CMS guidelines say you could use a non-metallic, non-Herbst, non-tap hinge device without a mechanical hinge like Evo for a Medicare patient, but you can't get paid. Well, you could use it because there's a code, but you can't get paid because Medicare still has to do something called writing a local coverage determination or an LCD. Now, there are a couple of insurance companies in a couple of states where we've had some of our customers test billing K1027 and using a non-typical Herbst device, using an Evo to see about reimbursements. And we've had independent private insurances look this up, see the codification, and a couple of them have paid. And these are companies which would have normally requested a PDAC guideline. It's a very small N. It's a small test group in just a couple of states with a couple of doctors, so don't get excited about getting paid. We're hoping that this fall sometime, maybe by the end of the year anyhow, that the government, CMS, in all its infinite wisdom, will write the national coverage determination first, then the local coverage determinations. They also have to categorize whether K1027 will be in the same box as EO486. EO486 is in a box called durable medical equipment. In fact, one of the criteria for the durability was the Herbst arm or the metal hook in front. So K1027, we would think will end up in that same box, but there's no telling. If they put it in Part B, that has different coverage limitations, different co-payments, different coding and reporting requirements. So it would be favorable, and we hope, we petition that it will be in the same DME box as EO486, but that's to be determined. And then the local coverage determinations will be written, and then Medicare will determine its reimbursement rate. We're hoping that they're seeing the sophistication of device improvements and evidence about new devices so that they're rewriting a new code. They can't change the old code. The way CMS works is there are thousands of codes, by the way, that have never been used, but you can write a new code for a new kind of coverage, and they'll write that. But then you have to get local coverage determination, then the code has to be used, then fees have to be determined, coverage has to be determined. So there's a little ways for K1027 to go, but it's an exciting possibility, and maybe a little higher reimbursement. And that would be exciting too, because in some jurisdictions, the Medicare payments are abysmal. But the idea of not having to use a Herbst or not having to use an anterior hook device would be pretty exciting for Medicare patients and all of the other insurances that follow the PDAC guidelines. In Michigan, we don't have a lot of that, but in some states they do. And that's always a challenge. This will take time. We'll probably see some progress on it this fall. We're hoping by October, and maybe by the end of the year, CMS will be paying on it, and then it'll be to the other carriers to slowly pick that up. So expect this to be an evolution that starts to see progress this fall and into 2023. If you're looking into the future, in this case, the very near future, you'll see some coverage for a new code for non-hinged devices, non-mechanically hinged devices. And there'll be, I'm sure, more dorsals and more other types of appliances that will apply for that. What I want you to think about, and I think this is where maybe Medicare is coming from, Medicare recognizes that they require us to use devices, Herbsts and anterior hook devices, that do not have as good an efficacy as iterative advanced devices, for example. And some recently peer-reviewed independent research and articles and randomized controlled trials have demonstrated that. And so maybe they're finally loosening the chains on those limitations. Because can you imagine the lunacy of a physician saying, well, I want to use this heart stent for this patient, even though I know it doesn't work as well because it's cheaper? Or can you imagine CMS saying to a physician, I want you to use this one because it's cheaper and it saves CMS money? I think that the Philips recall and the challenges we've seen with CPAPs and parts and pieces being recalled has maybe opened the eyes of regulatory bodies to see things a little bit differently with more open eyes. So there's good hope for K1027, no question about that. I said we talk about materials. Please don't think of this as picking on any one. I crossed out Oventus because they are in, I don't know whether it's chapter 9 or chapter 11, but they're the other nylon device that's on this grid. But we've done a lot of research on the different devices, how they stain, how they build bioburden, how they're harder to keep clean. Certainly some of the mill devices now, we can make them much smaller than other devices we've seen in the past. And any kind of a milled polymethyl methacrylate puck or sheet that was control cured instead of bench cured is going to be much better at not taking up stain, not taking up bioburden, being easier to keep clean, being able to be made smaller. Now, some of the devices like the pink one in the middle still took up stain, even though the pink portion was milled, but it had a soft liner in it that took up the stain. And so the pink portion would not have stained at all. It would look just like the IA from Prosomnus. But we have to have materials that when physicians look at them, they don't think we're a bunch of idiots. Because when they see these devices that look like crap after a couple of years and their patients are actually putting them in their mouth, it's a bit embarrassing for us. So if we have devices that have to be made larger and bulkier because they're made out of co-cure acrylic, which isn't hard, or other kinds of polymers, or the printed nylons, which were 30 times more stain uptaking than some of the other devices. These numbers here are delta E's measured with a colorimeter. So I wish I could tell you that ProSomnus has found all the answers, but we have not. We have milled PMMA, and so do other companies, and we don't jack it up at all with any kind of a line or anything. So that's good. So it's really easy to keep clean. My Evo's a couple years old, looks brand new. I've seen IAs that are 4 or 5 years old that look brand new. So it's really easy to keep clean. It's almost hard to get it dirty. So that's cool. But that's really a bit of an improvement, but still a sophomoric material compared to the MG6 technology that's in Evo. That material has all of the strength characteristics and even then some, and has a little bit of flexibility, but it's still not perfect. We're going to see better materials than what we have today. Better materials that trump the milled polymethyl methacrylates and the MG6 technology, which are leading the field today. I mean, that's the number one kind of device, iterative advancement, the number one material that's out there. It's being used so much. It's fantastic stuff. We're going to find better. We're going to do better. Whether it's printed, whether it's milled, don't hang your hat on either one of those. It's going to be driven by the material characteristics. ProSomnus mills, Panthera prints, fantastic. When a better material comes along that we think will trump the milled polymethyl methacrylates or the milled MG6 technology, we'll print those instead of milling those. Nobody's wedded to a procedure or a mechanical way of making those devices. In fact, I can think of so many advantages from a printing perspective, but just the materials that we have available that are cost effective for us in dental sleep medicine today just don't reach that. The idea here is to have safer, more biomedically safe materials as well. I don't want you to take that lightly. You can go to the FDA and look up the complaints on oral appliances. There's hundreds of complaints. 60%, 59% of the complaints are for allergy, rash, irritation, suspected cytotoxicity, that kind of thing, pain, swelling, not temporomandibular joint pain or anything like that. So we could loosely affiliate almost 60% of the FDA complaints to material toxicity, irritation, allergenicity. So we have to have better materials. 100% of the 59% of those tissue reactions are all the soft liner materials and the cold cured and bench cured acrylics, as well as the thermocryl type of materials that are in some of the temporary devices and such. So we're not going to be able to look medicine in the eye and expect them to trust us and believe in us in the future without better materials. You hear me talk a lot about precision and how much precision matters. I'll play a little math game with you. There's a rule of 65, 98, and 99.7. And any of you took a statistics class would know that that's 1, 2, or 3 standard deviations of a normal distribution in a population. Well, you can flip that around and look at the distribution of success in a population. And although the numbers don't line up perfectly, they're pretty close. Legacy devices, typical custom devices that are made with bench cured and cold cured acrylics and some of the printed nylons have demonstrated in the literature. That's not my numbers. You can look in the literature, take all the Arcady studies, take all of the papers that have been published in the ADSM, call all that data together, which we've done. And you see that there's a range of 50% to about 72 or 73% efficacy in a large population. It gets a little bit higher if you just look at mild and moderates. It gets to probably about 70% efficacy for mild and moderates using the old style legacy devices. When you go to the new precision iterative advancement devices that are out there, it jumps to 94%. Several of the registries that have been done, the San Diego registry published the ADSM, Eddie Sauls, he's a physician, his Syracuse registry published at World Sleep and AASM, my registry, the Evo registry, all are in the 90+% range for mild and moderates. They drop down a little bit to 75 to 80 if you include the severes. But now we're starting to look at the kind for mild and moderate sleep apnea, this difference between, say, 70% efficacy and 94% efficacy in a peer-reviewed independent study. And if you look at that, that's like moving from 1 to 2 standard deviations, moving from 65% of the patients being treated to 98. That's the kind of change that will get physicians' attention and engage them in changing their prescribing patterns. And the kinds of studies that illustrate that will show them that we're serious about what we're doing. And similar to the discussion I had with challenging CMS guidelines using inferior products, I think we're challenged to say to ourselves, how do I grab off the shelf a device that I know maybe is going to cost me 10 to 20% points of efficacy, and maybe be bulkier and harder for the patient to wear, harder for the patient to keep clean? How do I do that? And I can't justify that by just saying, well, I saved some money doing that. I can't. Those are really challenges that we're going to face to advance dental sleep medicine really into the 21st century that it belongs in. This whole idea of evidence-based, on the left is that study showing 94% efficacy for milds and moderates and 81% when you include severes. There's some data about the studies in the middle. We're doing a FlowSat study. We've got about 107 or 8 enrolled. FlowSat stands for First Line OSA Therapy. It's being done by Olivier van der Beeken, a physician, and Dr. Mark Brem in Belgium at the University of Antwerp. And they're starting 100 plus patients on oral appliances, 90 days, crossing them over to CPAP, comparing the results, moderate and severes, and then they're offering them a choice of which device. And they're all wearing sensor technology that shows the objective compliance. We've done 2. I think we're the only company that's done 2 or any objective compliance studies that have been published, and this will be a 3rd one with a much larger N in population. So we'll have excellent, think of this, efficacy data, excellent, think of this, compliance data. We'll be able to calculate the effectiveness of the therapy and compare that to the effectiveness of CPAP and ask and answer the questions: a superior efficacy for CPAP, but a far inferior compliance or adherence. How does that compare to oral appliance in terms of multiplying those 2 numbers to get the effectiveness? And then which therapy did the patient choose? So it's an excellent prospective study, crossover being done to determine first line OSA therapy. It's using that new Evo product with the Evo material, and I think a Thermon, I'm sure it's a Thermon sensor in there. So it's a really good use of the new sensor technology. It's those kinds of studies. The severe indication trial that John Rimmers is doing, we have FDA permission. I don't want to say clearance. We have FDA permission to do a severe OSA therapy treatment study using Evo. We're hoping to achieve results better than a comparative. We would be happy to compare the effectiveness to CPAP, but we're going to compare the effectiveness and efficacy as well to Inspire Therapy. Inspire Therapy's STAR trial, which got it a severe indication, was successful. 68% of the patients, and they wore it 75% of the time, 32% of the patients complained of side effects. Well, and just to be clear, 68% success meant taking severe patients down below 20. So we've got some goalposts set up in front of us that are a little taller. We've got to get down below 15 in our study, but we think using Evo, we'll be able to do that. And our hope will be to achieve a severe clearance indication from the FDA for Evo, iterative advancement dental sleep medicine therapy. That's going to be the kinds of studies that we need to show to physicians, because they do not say, well, what do you use? What works in your hands? They look at the studies and the evidence. They sort of shake their heads a little bit when they see what we've been doing. They do tolerate it because when a patient fails CPAP or won't wear a CPAP, oral appliances are in play. But man, they don't think of them as a first line OSA treatment, and we do not have a clearance. It's only an off-label use when we get to use those for a severe patient. So it's a real challenge. Michael, I see you coming on screen, so I know you must be anxious to say something.
Yeah, no, I mean, from an audience standpoint, I see some of the questions coming in, and I also kind of want to fill in the gaps a little bit from what I hear consistently from our coaching clients in the field. How do you communicate the value of the types of appliances you're using, precision technology, the stuff that you just mentioned in very dental clinical terms? One, how do you communicate that benefit to patients? And two, how do you communicate that to referring physicians?
Yeah, 2 different audiences. And so even though the message is kind of the same, the message has to be coached in very different ways. Let's pretend it's not a CMS patient, right? And so if my reimbursement profile, and I love what you do with new dental sleep medicine providers and how you start them on a a path that's allows them to get their first, several months worth of devices done without having to hassle with a lot of insurance and things like that. You really streamline it, make it easy for them. But you think about going out past that, and somebody starts to get a little bit productive with sleep, and you start to think about how you're going to engage insurance. And so for me, my reimbursement profile, if I lump it all together and divide it by the number of devices, allows me to pretty much choose any device I want. Now, some reimbursements are higher and some are lower, but if I average them all together, and that's what I do to keep in my mind a little bit of sanity, it allows me to make those choices. So I don't have to offer the patient inferior and superior devices or choices or anything like that, unless they're Medicare. And if they're Medicare, I've got a problem, because now I'm looking at doing an inferior device. But there's a couple of interesting rules in Medicare. With Medicare, you don't have a choice. You have to deliver a Medicare device. So I show them the best Medicare device out there that I think, in my opinion, and I tell them this is what Medicare pays for them. And they don't like seeing all the metal on there. And I point that out. I said, well, I'd like to be able to make you this. And I show them a precision device. This is also a precision device. And it doesn't have the metal, and it looks much more comfortable and small. And they go, I really like that. I go, well, I would love to give you that. But Medicare, in its infinite wisdom, says it will pay for a new device for you, but it's an old model. It's as if they said, we're going to give you a brand new cell phone, but it's a flip phone, not a smartphone. It's a new car, but it doesn't have anti-lock brakes or a backup camera. And you're like, what? Yeah, it's old, but it's new, but it's old technology. I have to make you one of those. Now I can make you this and we're done. Medicare pays for just about everything. Have a nice day. Or I can make you a different one of these, which is not the best version I can find of this. In fact, it will be the least expensive one, because you're probably going to choose to wear this one, which I'll sell you as a backup device. So I can have the patient sign a proof of delivery. And I have this conversation with every Medicare patient. I can have the patient sign a proof of delivery that I fulfill them with a PDAC approved, CMS approved, one of the 151 devices on their list that are approved for Medicare use, deliver that device, sign the POD, and then I sell them, after they sign an AB and an advanced beneficiary notice, a backup device, which could be anything I wanted, including Evo, and I could charge whatever I felt was a fair fee for that. So I can have a really clear value conversation with the patient to go, I can make you this or this, and here's the cost. And there's really nothing wrong with the patient then. Think about this. The patient choosing the inferior solution. I don't want to make it sound that way, but the patient choosing, well, I just want to do this one because it's cheaper. If the patient understands the efficacy, the comfort, the side effects versus this, and you've really made that clear, then the patient is making an informed choice about their own healthcare. They're choosing physical therapy over surgery. They're choosing whatever procedure fits their budget, their risk tolerance, their profile of how they think they want to heal. And that's how I have that conversation with the patients. I love showing them the puck. I've got one in the drawer over there. I've got one right here. I love showing them the puck of a milled device, and that's always impressive to them. I talk to them about CAD CAM and artificial intelligence, and they think that's pretty cool. I use that same thing with physicians, by the way, when I go. When I go to physicians, the key is I need their ear, and I need 15 or 30 minutes. And the first time I ask them for that, it's not going to be at a lunch and learn, because they're asking for a lunch and learn because they're not going to give that to me. Instead, I usually go to see a physician and I drop off one of my business cards, stapled to a registry of my last 50 or 100 cases that I've done with pre and post AHIs, BMIs, ages, all of that. And then the ADSM, AASM joint guidelines. And we stop by and we ask if we could get some of their business cards. And if we could really understand what do they need from us when we refer a patient. Because we're seeing sleep patients who need sleep tests, and I'd like to send you patients, doctor. What do you need from us? They usually want to listen then. That's when the gatekeeper says, whoa, hold on a minute. Let me see if doctor's free. And they go and get doctor, and now I get 15 or 20 minutes at a time, and I can pull out a puck, and I can pull out an Evo, and they can see how those are different from other devices. And I usually leave with them this JCSM article, or I leave with them a couple of pieces of information that show we don't have tooth movement, we have fewer side effects, those kinds of things. And they realize that maybe there's some science today and some precision dental sleep medicine, like they do precision medicine. That's not enough though. Just because they've got all the paperwork and just because I've shown them some evidence, they're like, okay, and then they wait back and we send them a couple patients. And then finally we get some patients for them. And usually there's maybe a patient that showed up on our doorstep that is already their patient. And we get to treat them with an oral appliance. And then we have success. And then they get to see how I send them back for the sleep test. They get to see how we communicate with them about what they want. We ask their preferences. And they realize that they're working with a different kind of dentist who views dental sleep medicine differently and is kind of based in science. And they like that. And they embrace that. And then they send you more patients. My problem, Michael, you and I have talked about this. I have such a role with personas. I don't have more time to see more patients. So I was just talking with a friend of mine, Earl Bogra, who's down the road in Southfield, Michigan. I told him I'm gonna have to start sending him some of my patients because I just can't work anymore. You know, I get a half day a week. The Personas lets me play hooky, and if Lynn finds out I'm trying to do a full day by listening to this webinar, I'm gonna get fired. So value conversations indeed. Great question. I see some of the questions like, how do we measure success?
Yeah,
I like that. And with a follow-up sleep study. So it's interesting. The follow-up sleep study usually comes pretty early. And so I'm not sure that it's a perfect metric for how successful the therapy was, because you really want it to be successful for a longer period of time. Because when I rip on compliance for CPAP, it's usually after 90 days where it really starts to fall off because they're trying to meet and exceed that criterion of 5 nights out of 7, 4.5 hours a night for 90 days so that people can get paid. I measure success usually with a set of numbers, but it can differ from physician to physician. I have one physician that's believes everything has to be under 5 to really be successful. If a patient won't wear a CPAP, won't come back to CPAP, and they have to live with a 7 or a 9, they'll do that. But let's take that outlier out. Most of my physicians and I, we've had a conversation about measuring success and deciding when we're successful. And every one of them to a number with that exception of that one has agreed to the following set of guidelines. We'd like to reduce the AHI by 50% and below 10. And it's and because if they started at 80 and I reduced it to 37, I exceeded the 50% reduction, but they still have severe sleep apnea. Not a good result. I pushed that patient back to CPAP. And if they went from 11 to 9, I got them under 10, but I really probably haven't improved their sleep very much at all with an oral appliance. So the idea of a 50% reduction in the 11 would have taken me to 5.5, and getting that 80 down to 10 or below would have been successful. Now, that doesn't mean that we haven't had a few cases that the physician is okay with 17 after an 80 or something like that. But usually those guidelines hold very well for us. When I'm measuring success in the registries for, and they're all published, so you can read them all in the ADSM, AESM, World Sleep, or EBEDSMA over in Europe. It's always 50% reduction in under 10, so we use both of those. Keeping a device clean. How do you device clean? What's a better term for all appliances so that patient doesn't think it's a refrigerator? Yeah, mandibular advancement device, I guess. Sleep apnea device, lots of things like that. Device might be a better name. I like that. Keeping it clean, it's soap and water and a toothbrush. We don't have to soak anything. We air dry it when we're done. There's mornings when I get up and I rinse it and brush it with a toothbrush. I would say I probably haven't missed 5 days in 2 years brushing it with a toothbrush. I've probably missed 50 days in 2 years using soap. So sometimes it's just water. I try not to use toothpaste because of the abrasivity, but super easy to keep those monolithic milled acrylics or MG6 technology clean. Super, super easy. If there's a dorsal arm jack screw, or if there's a Herbst arm, you have all the same nooks and crannies on those to try and keep clean. They're a little bit more difficult. We did have one Herbst patient come back with a PH who had just calculus just everywhere. And I'm like, holy crap, I don't know that I've ever seen that much. It was his 1-year checkup. So we had to dunk it in that calculus remover and soak it. The hygienist did it in the office that I was renting space from for about 30 minutes, and it was sparkly clean again. And we saw him at his 2-year and his 3-year, and he's keeping it clean. So I think he was just, I don't know if he's wearing it all day or cleaning the plastic and never cleaning any saliva off, and it was just crystallizing on it. It's hard to say. Good questions. So evidence is our path to win the hearts and the minds of physicians. No question about that. So let's talk a little bit about sensors and wearable technology and what all that means for us and to us in dental sleep medicine. And I guess I'd say this article was in Sleep Review just this week. So I put it in there. This is Razor Edmonds. I don't know if this is actually his sensor device. He's doing a study at Harvard. He's going to do a study with us at Harvard as well as part of the severe indication trial. And I think that I'm not sure exactly what they're using in terms of their technology. And again, I don't know if this is a real sensor or not. I don't know if those two metal things are on the left-hand side, but it looks a little creepy to me, but I'm not sure what it is. But the idea being today, we have excellent sensor technology that's very good at predicting that the patient's in therapy, that the patient's wearing the device. We're doing our third study with it now. We did the effects trial. We did a trial with Jerry Hu. Both of those were published. Both of those had 90% success rates at patients wearing their devices 7 hours a night, 7 nights a week, not 4.5 hours, 5 nights out of 7 as a compliance metric. So our other factor to multiply things by is far better than what we normally see in CPAP. So high five to us. That's great. But when you start to think about other kinds of sensor technology, and you can see some of this is a little drawing on the bottom that's actually the patient app, and the physician portal there is actually for CPAP, but they're mocking together the idea of an oral appliance. I love that. The idea of an app, I love that. And then in this particular model, they've got the CPAP app from, I think it's a ResMed CPAP app, and then physician portal. That's the kind of technology we need, because today, physicians don't have anything to talk to our patients about when they come in for their 6-month or their annual visit. How's your device going? How's it wearing? How are you sleeping? There's no information about how compliant they are, how much they're wearing it. There's no information about flow. The CPAP devices that patients wear talk about flow, mask leaks, numbers of hours of usage. They also typically do some sort of surrogate calculation of AHI. The physicians don't look at that surrogate AHI algorithm calculation and take it very seriously. They don't have the kind of backup robust data that you'd have with an HST or anything like that. So they don't take that under consideration. But it's more information for them to be able to talk about. So I think as we look forward into the future, not tomorrow, but in 2023, we will see the dawn of sensor technology in oral appliances become much more prolific. Will it be in all the appliances? Probably not. If we fast forward 3 years, will it be in all of the appliances? Getting closer, probably. As things continue to get smaller, safer, easier to use, as we continue to evolve to use better materials that allow us to make smaller devices, that when we bulk them up with sensor technology, they still stay small. We could start to see in the 3 to 5 year time frame, maybe the standard device has at least the performance characteristics of the milled materials that we see today, and that they all have sensor technology in them. The sensors today are inexpensive. They'll improve the battery lives. That's if there's a shortcoming to the Brabon or the Thermon chip. First off, it was hard to put them in cold care acrylics because the exothermic reactions would sometimes damage the sensors in the technology and the chips. We mill a slot and drop them in and just seal the top, and so that seems to be a little bit more effective. So we're going to continue to see the evolution of much more sophisticated sensor technologies, and it would be very interesting for a patient to have an app. And just like I wear my Fitbit watch and has the light on the back that tells me it's giving me some oxygen data that I wouldn't have had otherwise. It's a pretty cool opportunity for patients and physicians to have real meaningful integration to improve the outcomes. I think that's what's great. And we're just responsible for forwarding those up. See another question come in. So with Prosomnus, patients don't need to buy the labs, cleaning tabs, et cetera? Absolutely not. Maybe occasionally you do something like that for devices that have a jack screw if they're gunking up, or the Herbst arms, but I've only had that one patient that really had even any gunky problems with those. And to be fair, I used a lot of Evo, used a lot of IA and IA Select. I did use other devices. There's no dentist that could plug one device and use that for everything they do. So I've used other manufacturers. I've worn every device that's out there pretty much, even devices of companies that aren't around anymore. So I guess I've technically never worn an Oasis, but I have one in my set that I use for demonstration when I'm showing the different devices and teaching for courses and stuff like that. So wearables are going to be interesting, going to be kind of exciting. You're going to see a lot more about wearables next year. There's a lot of companies working on wearable technology today that'll be in the devices, and it's just going to continue to get better. We're just, at Personas, we sit inside and sometimes we have these like think tank meetings, and we think we're pretty hot stuff because we've got this iterative advancement thing, and there's not too many types of devices that have that kind of thinking and technology. We got the 90-degree post, and we think Sung was so smart for inventing that. And then we've got these smaller devices. Then we found Evo instead of acrylics, and that's pretty cool. But this is just the beginning. I mean, it reminds me of when you could detach the phone cord from the wall and pick up the phone, and it had this big battery pack, and it was clumsy. And now we've got a smaller battery pack, and it's in the phone, but the phone's still pretty big. And now we're starting to miniaturize the phone, but it's still a phone, and it's still a flip phone maybe. And then, man, somebody added a camera, and you could text, but you had to type the letter 3 times to get to C, A, B, C. Press it 3 times and hold it. So we're just at the beginning of that kind of technology. Like, these are the first versions of the first smartphones. And that's exciting too. But you still got, I'm not sure. I think my phone is maybe a 10 or a 12. I think it's a 12. And I think there's a 13 out now. And my watch is at a 7. The evolutions even of the smartphones now have come so quickly so expect to see the floodgate open, and also expect to see cold cure, non-precision devices. They're going to fall by the wayside. I'm surprised more companies haven't done the kinds of things that we do, mounting cases on articulators, virtual and real articulators, every single case, so that we are accurate in the byte transfer. We've done those studies in terms of precision so that the titration goes easier. We don't lose efficacy. The 90-degree post to hold the manimal in its position. So I mean, there's just so many things we can do better in dental sleep medicine that we're starting to do. It's an exciting time. I can be proud. My grandparents will be proud. My kids will be proud. My parents will be proud. And so we feel good about it. We'll finish up talking tonight. I'll take some more Q&A, and we'll actually get done on time for a change. Michael will be happy about that. We won't have run over 15 or 20 minutes like we sometimes do. Oh, you're going to pipe in now? Anything to say?
I got a handful of questions, but why don't you go ahead and finish up with this?
Okay, good. Good.
I'll wait till you're done.
All right. So this slide, so I don't want you to think this is my slide, and I'm not saying this. This is a slide from the Sleep Medicine Trends meeting 2 years ago in Tampa, Florida. And they were wrestling with the question, where's competition going to come from, ... for sleep medicine. And they included us in the list, of course. And then they had this great, and they were looking at things like SomnoMed's Renew Sleep Systems. Remember, SomnoMed built brick and mortar places. They hired physicians, they hired dentists to take impressions, and they said dentistry wasn't taking care of sleep medicine fast enough. We're going to do this ourselves. And that was an idea that maybe cost them a year or 2 years worth of growth. And they've now pulled back on those. That CEO is no longer there. They've moved on to trying to get back to their roots and look at dentists. That might have worked for them if they poured enough money on it, but it was also alienated all their dental clients. And so you're never going to see a company like Personas go in that direction. But we have to worry about third-party models of manufacturers cobbling together a group of people, certainly a physician, a sleep physician, and then somebody who could take impressions and do something like that and work around dentistry's role. That's a risk. It's a risk to us. I don't know that primary care physicians are going to want to take impressions, or cardiologists or pulmonologists, neurologists, but ENTs could. They understand the mouth, the oral cavity. Or maybe the ADSM guidelines, and the ASM guidelines would say today that a dentist or an ENT could fit those devices. Maybe they broaden their scope and they allow auxiliary utilization at a level we've never seen it. Remember that the ADSM and ASM used to be locked together at the hip, and now they're separate. Their meetings don't even occur at the same time anymore. So we don't know what that field's going to break into. And if they feel like they're not making much money, because sleep physicians don't, reading sleep tests, interpreting sleep tests, having consultations with patients, that's not the most lucrative thing going on for them in the world. And they can't own their own DME company and sell CPAPs. That has to be such distant and arm's length because of Stark laws and anti-kickback laws and rules of regulation. But what if it was okay to have a demo capability in their practices and subrogate that? That'd be interesting. They're also worried, and we should also be worried about Walmart, CVS, big box stores that already are DME providers, already are DME suppliers, already are selling CPAP supplies, masks, hoses, etc. I don't know. I think of the Invisalign model that stepped away from traditional braces and therapy, and then it went to GPs, and then it continued to evolve to storefronts, didn't it? So that now you had this, you could go into a storefront, or you could take your own impressions and send them in, and somebody would fabricate you a set of aligners that would give you a result, and all without a direct dentist supervision. That Clear Correct model is, I'm not sure what they call their retail centers, but there's a couple of them out there. And that's a fear. You can stand on a platform today and get fitted with a wide variety of different orthoses for your feet if you need an orthotic. There's money to be made in treating dental sleep medicine. And if the demand for services exceeds the ability for dentistry to fulfill that demand or need, medicine and payers are going to look for cost-effective alternatives to solve that equation. And so that's going to be, those will be the kinds of threats we'll worry about downstream. Dentists doing dental sleep medicine, dentists moving from dentistry to dental sleep medicine, I think that's a great pathway. And if we could step our game up in such a way that we work intimately with physicians in a trusting, collaborative relationship, I think that would be a good outcome. And we could stave these kinds of risk factors off for a much longer period of time. Less likely that a company will get impatient, or big box companies will step into our sandbox so much. So, Michael, that's my big six of peeking into the near future.
Well, I've got some clarifying questions, but I have a personal burning question, because
Burning.
you know my background. I'm 20 years in sleep medicine, and I started off as a sleep tech. I put CPAP centers in sleep centers for several years. So the big box stores was a tremendous fear for everybody except for ResMed and Philips. And I wonder if Walgreens and CVS have actually sold enough to show anything that's black versus red on their spreadsheets.
Well, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to that question, but I can say that they're expanding their Minute Clinic footprint in all of their retail stores. They're finding that the sales dollars, revenue, and income per square foot is better in Minute Clinic space and pharmacy space than it is in selling kids' toys and pop and candy. So they're adding them to all kinds of them. So that's an interesting construct.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you brought up a good point. If the demand exceeds the supply, then we've got problems.
Totally agree.
Getting more doctors in the space, doing good work, working with MDs, not alienating them. This is the future. And respectfully, guys and gals, if you don't know DME companies, not all are equal. But I can tell you, in the medical space, you go ask 20 physicians what they think about DME companies. They are, by and large, the flea bags of the industry, and everybody knows that they commit fraud. That's a stereotype, and it's by and large not true of most companies. But when I got into DME 15 years ago, there was an article in the largest DME company magazine called HME News, and it was how a Colombian drug dealer moved to Florida and started committing DME fraud for Medicare because it took them 10 years, 8 to 10 years to get someone who had passed away out of Medicare system. And all they did was fraudulent. And it was like, what? So I'm not making this up. I don't have the article. This is back before the internet, kinda, not really, but it's nuts. So just to be super clear, my point in all of that nonsense was to say, as a doctor, please make sure that you're differentiating yourself from someone who delivers a box called CPAP. It's a custom fit orthotic that's FDA cleared to treat a potentially life-threatening disease. You're a doctor, they're a doctor. You stay in your lane, you work with them. Sorry, they came here to hear you and not me. I'm just, put a cord in my own machine over here.
You've got a lot of experience with that. Speaking of experience, if somebody does need more experience, how's that for a handoff? Huh?
That was a.
Okay. I knew that slide was up next. So if somebody needs a little boost in there, you got some classes coming up, don't you?
Yeah, we do. What you're seeing on the screen, guys, if you've attended webinars before, you've seen this before. We do $200 off for anybody who wants to come. You buy your ticket, you get 4 people in your office to come for free. That's 70 CEs for $600. We don't like to think of ourselves as the cheapest date in town, but you'll have some fun. It's virtual, it's on Zoom, and we do have a lot of fun, but you'll walk out with an action plan to level up your program. So if you want to do more sleep, I'd come hang out with us for a weekend if you haven't already. Mark, if you want to go to the next one.
I would add that we've had several referrals, as you know, to your group, and those doctors are enjoying their path. I spoke about it earlier. You've really smoothed out. I like what you've done. It isn't what I did, so that's fun. We've talked about that before, but it's really an easier way for somebody to get started in dental sleep medicine. And I think that's a formidable way of doing it. So well done.
Yeah, thank you, man. Yeah, if you guys are struggling with medical billing at all, come to that course. We'll show you how to untie the knot with that and get some things cranking in the practice. If you've got burning questions that are not like course worthy, or you're just, you've taken 100 different courses and you're not going to do another one, feel free to hop on a coaching call. It's on the website, or you can go to that link right there, use the QR code, either to the course or to talk to a coach. We do coaching sessions. Your initial one is free. We just give you a straight event answer as possible. So if we can help, we'd love to. That's what we're here for. And I mean, frankly, like Mark, like you said tonight, we got to do more in the space.
Amen.
Because others are going to come in, or the demand will be so great that the market will be required to deviate. So we gotta we gotta level up in ways that haven't been done before.
And please hear me when you hear like Prosomnus Evo or something like that. I want every manufacturer to do better. I want every, and on and on. I just want us to everybody to elevate our game. We'll all win. The rising tide will raise all boats as long as we're doing it that way. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I would also say too, don't look at CPAP and think, oh, it's always blown that amount of air. It used to be the size of a large checked suitcase, and now it's the size of a water bottle, but it still is a mask, and it still is guys, that's like saying in the 90s people had car phones. I mean, Mark, to your point, the technology advancement has exponentially increased in the last decade and a half. So I'm excited for the changes that you talked about, man. I mean, from K1027, I got a couple questions about that, but from a material standpoint, let me get into one of the questions. In your opinion, where do you see materials going? Not Prosomnus specifically, but just magic wand as a dentist. If you just went, what does that look like?
Custom printed materials. I think printing is where the future is going to be, not in milling. And I think we're going to see that they're going to be able to laser center and print materials that are much denser than what's available today. Today, the nylons that are used are the most porous when you look at them on an electron micrograph, and they're flexible, they're strong. I like those characteristics. But but they just have to be easier to keep clean. Those are a real nuisance. And so, but that can't be far around the corner. And I'm sure the magic wand says printing is the future, not milling. I like that. And then I would say it's just a question of the material cost working out. I believe there's probably materials out there today, but if it costs $400 or $500 in materials, then the device is going to be $1,200. Nobody's going to buy it. And so they just got to get there.
That old thing called the space shuttle, the heat shield, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Okay. So Abby's got a question. This is, you can see it in there. Basically the summary is they've got a very dialed in clinical protocol in their practice. She is the sleep champion running it, or one of two that are running it. What's up, Abby? She's trying to reduce the titration tests because she's doing 2 to 3 on average per patient. Any tips to do that?
So without knowing the device selection, the protocol for taking the bite, et cetera, there are so many studies out there. I did a dose study, I think it was a year ago at the AEDSM, talking about where we started. And we were starting at 50.3% of the range of the protrusive retrusive range of motion. I started 50 in millimeter, not inch forward, inch backwards, to try and find something that's comfortable and something that has a negative snore test. So if my negative snore test is like a poor man's pharyngometer. It's a piece of technology that I'm using, snore test, like a piece of technology that I'm using, CBCT scan, pharyngometer, something to say, in this mechanical position, I seem to be opening the airway a little bit. I like that. It gives the patient hope, gives me a little bit of an indication. But here's what I know from the Matrix Plus studies, which were done from 0 to 100% protrusion if necessary, is that some patients resolve at 20%. Some resolve at 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. So finding a place to start is the first step in reducing the number of titrations. So around 50% with Prosomnus style or precision style devices, I should say, because they're smaller and they don't need as much titration, is a good place to start. And for me, 38% of my patients in a 53 person study, consecutive cases, resolved at 0, starting position. The average advancement was 1.29 millimeters. Somebody went as far as 4 millimeters forward. One person had to go backwards because their jaw muscles got sore and we had to inch them forward a little bit. So now if we go 50% plus 1.29 on average, that's a pretty tight field. There's probably a couple people who resolved at 50%, who might have resolved at 40% or 30%. We didn't test that. And we didn't test that because I was trying to develop a protocol that was easy enough, reduce the number of appointments. The second thing that reduces, so the starting position choice goes a long way to reducing the number of titration visits. The second thing is, if you take the bite here, I want the device to come back here, not here, not here, not here. And we know that devices are supposed to be delivered within 1 millimeter of the original bite position, but when we did a small N study, sent the same impressions to 5 different manufacturers, had to make 3 of the same devices, none of the devices were the same position, and they averaged 1.3 to 5 millimeters of deviation from the original bite position. So if it's off a little bit, right, left, forward, back, and it's as the crow flies in 3-dimensional space, if it's off a little bit, then you're going to have either asymmetrical titration, or you'll need to titrate more, or maybe you under titrate. That's going to leak efficacy. That's going to mean it's going to be harder and take more time, more appointments to get that patient to the treatment position. The third thing I think that helps with reducing the amount of titration test is to say, giving the patient really clear, I shouldn't say the patient, developing a really clear protocol for when and how far to advance. That could be the patient or it could be us. My good friend John Carollo, who I love to death, says, I can't believe you let so many of your patients titrate themselves. And I say to my good friend John Carollo, I can't believe you titrate all of your patients. There's no way I want those patients coming in for appointments. I don't have the time. And we're both right. We're both right. He gets good results and I get good results. So if I say to the patient, I'm going to have you every 5 days, I go, and don't worry if it's 4, don't worry if it's 6, don't stay up night. Every 5 days, I'm going to have you go forward 1 millimeter. And I explain to them how with the arches. And then I say, listen, if you feel like you're sleeping better, snoring less, not peeing as much, feeling more rested, whatever their buzzwords were. Look for the subjective signs and symptoms. When you feel they're better, celebrate, but still go forward 1 millimeter from there. Why? Because it might feel gooder, I tell them. It might feel gooder. But if you go forward and it doesn't feel gooder, come back. If you go forward and your jaws don't like it as much, come back. I say to them, I'm responsible for pulling your jaw down and forward. I'll give you the device that does it. You've got to find the sweet spot. Where do you feel like you sleep best? Don't just keep going forward to go forward. That's not good. And when you say, I'm sleeping the best here, and now we've gone 2 or 3 weeks, then I'll do the first titration test. So I don't even think about doing a titration test till the patient comes back and says, I've got really great subjective symptoms to tell you about. Really improved this, 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 and this. Jaws are feeling good, sleeping good, everything's good like that. Fabulous. So most of the time, and I could go back in my data, I don't have this number off the top of my head to be accurate with, but I would say 80% of the time, that first titration test gives me data that I can send them for the follow-up sleep test and have that interpreted.
Yeah.
And maybe 20% of the time, I want to push them out again. And yes, we'll sometimes add, we'll talk about positional therapy, and I'm careful to say, you may want to ask the sleep physician about positional treatment and positional therapy or nasal cones or other things like that, because I'm never quite certain where the line is drawn between I'm playing physician or I'm playing their sleep doctor making recommendations. It's not a prescription item, but I always say some of my patients have had good success with Flonase or melatonin. I don't tell them that I'm recommending. I'm always really nervous and careful.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody asked me, how do I determine the 1.29 millimeters protrusion? That was the average. So some were 1, some were 2, some were 3. You put them all together and divide it by the number, and it was 1.29 millimeters. And the devices go a millimeter at a time. So yeah, good question. I did not measure 1.29 millimeters. No, I don't have that capability either. Not that good.
So Abby thanked you profusely for your answer. And
I answered profusely. I answered profusely.
Yeah, and she knows you. So I guarantee she had her notebook ready when that happened. So everybody else, because I know Sherry, you're welcome. Thank you for your kind words about tonight. There, CE link and all the other links for the course and the Ask a Coach a Question are in the chat. We'll keep going and answering your questions. But yeah, just to let you know, that's in the chat.
There's one more good question. Michael's asking about vertical. And I love that because I think the best position of the mandible is going to be a 3-dimensional spot in space. And how do we find that? Well, you know, I mean, I try to keep things reasonably simple, but my mind has to be open to the outliers. So, and I'll use John Carollo as an example again, because he and I are such good friends, and he knows I say this and he'd say it about me. So he uses a lot more vertical quicker than I do taking a bite. I use vertical when I don't get a good result going horizontal. I try to figure that out before I make the appliance though. So I got the George gauge, got them around 50%. How's that feel? Great. Snore test. They sound the same. How's that feel? Does it feel the same? Yeah. Wasn't it harder? No, it wasn't harder. Let me go 40 millimeter. How's that? That's still pretty easy. 2 millimeters if they got a big range. Man, now I'm 7 millimeters into a 10 millimeter range. I'm getting a little nervous about starting them there. And if they can still make a good snoring sound, I stop and add vertical. So and sometimes if I add vertical to that bite fork, to the George gauge, and I've just added composite to the bite fork. So I've got a 3, a 5, and a 7. I can add that, and sometimes that seems to help and try to find that 3-dimensional position. Now, let's say I didn't do that, and let's say I bring them forward and I don't get a good result. If I'm looking at a sequence of 100 patients and I'm successful 80% of the time with mild, moderate, and severes, there's 20 people I got to look them in the eye and say, I'm sorry, this just didn't work for you. You need to go back on CPAP. On some of those patients, I believe, and if it's 94% of the milds and moderates, now it's 6 out of 100. On some of those 6 patients, maybe vertical would have helped. And I don't have a device where I can adjust the vertical easily. I could make that patient the same EVO, and I could make it instead of the 3 millimeter bite fork, I could make it at 6 and try that. I can't add anything temporarily to it very easily like I could acrylic. So that's a disadvantage of EVO. Man, I'll take all the other advantages if that's the only disadvantage.
Yeah.
And I do kind of wish I could. I wish I could take those 6 that didn't respond to the mild to moderates and try a few other things. I don't want this to sound wrong, but man, 94% mild to moderate, that's pretty good. I'm more worried about, don't mishear me on that question. I'm more worried about the 70% not being at 90% than the 90% getting to 98%, if that makes sense. There's going to be a few people we're not going to be able to treat. And yeah, and if we could figure out the phenotype with the higher bone position, deep mandibular angle, I don't know. But vertical, people who say vertical doesn't matter, it does matter, because when you open me up 3 millimeters, my deep height, you open me up 3 millimeters, I'm opening up 13 in the back. Because when you open me up 3 millimeters, you had to open me the full height of my lower incisors, then 3 millimeters. So I'm opening up 13 in the front, and I don't know, 5 or 6 in the back. It's crazy. But talk about precision devices. I sent in my impressions for a device and the vertical and the bite relationship. I sent him for a device with a prescription and a bite digitally to make an appliance with the manufacturer. And it came back, and I said, man, that looks a lot taller than my other device, my Evo or other devices I have. So I measured it on the same set of models with the device in. They had opened the VOD, opened it 5.5 millimeters without my permission to put an occlusal block on the surface for titration and advancement. Now, the only reason it was only opened up 5.5 millimeters is because I have a massive amount of space in the back when I'm open 3 millimeters in the front. Or they might have had to open it 8 millimeters to get those occlusal blocks in. So when we move to an occlusal block design, you're going to have vertical, baby. You're going to have a lot of vertical. And if you give them a regular George gauge bite at 3, they might have 5, 6, 7, or 8. And I think changing a prescription like that without my permission, and I suspected they would do that. I have to say it was a bit of a trap, but suspecting they would do that, that's changing, that's filling the prescription intentionally differently, and that's not allowed. Anyhow, don't tell me we're done.
On that note,
Yeah, drop the mic. Scan for a course. Scan to talk to a coach.
yeah, no. So one more question about K1027,
Yeah.
and since that's the radio station of the evening, Medicare's working on it. LCD, NCD, national coverage determination, turns into one of 10 LCDs. Totally get it. Then we start getting paid by Medicare. On occasion, I've seen PPOs start reimburse things before Medicare when there's codes. In the past, it's not prevalent, but it's happened.
We have two examples already.
Okay, I was just going to ask you, is it happening, even trickling?
We have 2 examples. I can tell you this, that the examples we have paid exactly the same that they would have paid for EO486 right now.
Okay. You answered the next question already. What
I kind of guessed where you were going.
About revenue levels.
Those carriers in those states and those examples, it's not common. We've also had K1027 come back denied. We've tested it. We've had K1027 billed as a secondary appliance, a secondary device where they paid the laboratory bills. We get all kinds of weird things that have happened with it, but we're waiting for the mainstream. But you're right, the PPOs, private carriers, could choose to pay it. They usually go off of the NCD, LCD, but they could choose to pay it, and we've got 2 examples where they did.
Okay, cool. I'm excited to see how that plays out.
How do we hear about those billing updates? Said Jordan Wick. Ooh, I think it's not John Wick. He'd be after me.
You'd be dead.
I didn't kill your dog. So Medicare announces everything they do. And that's great. That's great. His name was John. Dangerous stuff. So the CMS announces all that stuff. And so we will certainly talk about it when it happens. I'm sure we'll have a webinar when it happens as the codes develop. But you can keep your ear to the ground. Go to cms.org. You can see, you can dig around on there and find some searches for K1027. And then you can sign up for alerts as well from them. That's probably the best way to keep in tune.
Cool. Man, you covered a lot tonight. Let's bring it home as we close up shop here. It's almost 9:15 Eastern.
Monzo.
What is the number one thing if you're talking to GPs, folks that are in DSM, they're doing the work or they're getting into doing the work today, and they're looking at the future? What's the main take home from you?
So the future is so bright, you ought to put on shades, because everything that is lined up and coming down the line is almost like the perfect storm for something great to happen. Whether it's looking at the technology, whether it's looking at finally opening the doors with physicians, think about this, whether it's looking at the Philips recall as an advantage to look at material technology and CPAP with a different light. There's a confluence of forces coming together that I think we're going to see a real shift in that, adopter curve that we usually see from an early adopter standpoint, where we might jump from 5, let's say, to 15% of the prescriptions being for oral appliances. By the way, if it did do that, that 10% shift would quadruple the market. So that literally in a very brief period of time, I would say overnight, a couple of years, we could go from 5 to 15% and quadruple the number of oral appliances we do on an annual basis.
Which needs doctors to do those.
Absolutely. And so you're beautifully positioned to educate and coach those folks in getting into sleep medicine, no question about it. And at any level, the novice or the seasoned veteran that wants to do more. That's good.
Thanks, man.
Okay.
Yeah. And my 2 cents as not Dr. Mark Murphy, but Mike Cohen from the sleep medicine side. Guys, just get out there, remove the obstacles. If you got to hammer away at it, if you ask a coach a question, I mean, Mark put his email in here for you guys. So let's get it done. We can do it together. Yep.
Got it.
Thank you, man. Appreciate your time as always.
Talk to you soon.
Have a good night, everybody.
Peace.